Hi, I am Tony Russo, and you are listening to a bonus episode of Funeral Service Insider, the podcast. This week we are speaking with Kahlen Knapik. He's from National Mortuary Shipping and Cremation, and he is also one of the members of the Kates-Boylston Advisory Board, which is a new initiative we started this year, and one of the things that I'll be popping in every now and again on a Wednesday to introduce you to another member of the board. So this week it's Kahlen, and we talk a little bit about the future of funeral service, about what he hopes to accomplish as an advisory board member, and what he hopes we accomplish as a publication. So before we get to that, I just do want to do a little tiny commercial. We have a webinar coming up with Cadence. It's called The Importance of Shifting from Aftercare to Continuing Care. It is on January 30th at 2 p.m. Link in the show notes to all the details you need. But that's all for now. Let's get into it here with Kahlen. So, welcome to the advisory board. Welcome to Kates-Boylston in general, and welcome to meeting you because we don't know each other. We're having this phone call is our introduction to one another. So if you could start by telling me, who you are and what you do.
Sure. Tony, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Kahlen Knapik. I am the Vice President for National Mortuary Shipping and Cremation. I'm also a licensed funeral director and embalmer. I've had the pleasure of writing a few articles for Kates-Boylston in the past, so this is very exciting. A little bit about National Mortuary Shipping. We are a international mortuary shipping and cremation company. So if you're a funeral director and you have a family who's had somebody who passed away out of state, overseas, anywhere outside your service area, you can call us and we would be able to help you care for the deceased and bring them back home.
It's funny, I actually tried to do a story about mortuary shipping, but I've been doing this for about 3 years, and every now and again I stumble upon a question that everybody except me knows the answer to, but I don't know it until I ask. There was a story a couple months ago about people not being able to fly bodies out of Montana, and I thought that was weird. And then I did a little digging, and it turned out that no, that's just not something that happens. They don't have, that's something the airports decide.
Once in a blue moon, you'll have embargoes in various areas that will prevent human remains shipping. We've never had issues getting out of Montana. Case scenario, you might have to go into Montana's one of those states that's there's quite a bit of mileage between things.
Right.
To go out of a different airport.
It was an odd story, but it made me think how important it is to just kind of like know a guy.
Yeah.
Because that's what your thing, it seems to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to be like you're a guy that people know for if they need you.
Exactly. I mean, that is our core focus. And our specialty is getting people home from areas that just you would have a hard time from. I mean, we get cases coming in and going out of the strangest places on earth. So it's not just Montana. I mean, we just got a call over the weekend going into Russia, which, was a little tricky right now, but
right.
That's what we do.
That's fantastic. And what is your background? Like, how is this something that you get into?
My background is not the conventional funeral director's background. I was very young and I was in college for engineering, and I was working with a company. I went for industrial engineering, mechanical engineering, and I had gotten laid off. I needed a job, and Robert Smith, the founder of our company, was looking for somebody to wash the cars and change the light bulbs. So I applied because I didn't want unemployment. 90 days, I'll get back into school and going back into mechanical engineering. And I ended up falling in love with the industry, falling in love with the company. Bob kind of took me under his wing. And I met lots of funeral directors. And, the funeral industry is such a tight-knit community that once you get in, everyone you work with now becomes like family. So I was 22 years old. And then Bob ended up passing away a few years later, and his wife came on board, and she kind of took me under her wing and talked me into going back to college, getting my degree in business and going to mortuary school. So I did that and just kept diving deeper and deeper. And became more and more passionate about the industry.
And that's really interesting. So if you're going to do what you do, why would you need to go to mortuary school? Just to, was it like a lingo thing, or are you sometimes called to work with the bodies?
In the beginning, I was.
Ah.
It was one of those. I'm a very driven person and goal
Mm.
focused. So if there's something out there that I can learn, I'm going to go for it. I'm in the funeral industry. I'm in the shipping industry. We are a local trade service here in Cleveland as well. Like, we don't ask any of our shipping agents to do anything that we have not done ourselves.
Mm.
So I thought that it was in my best interests to get my directors and embalmers license and actually have my feet down there with everybody.
That's fantastic. It just caught me off guard. When you got the call about this advisory board, what did they tell you about it, and what do you kind of expect from it?
So, like I said, I've done articles for Kates-Boylston before. Being a vendor, I'm very familiar with the company and some of your agents and editors. So when I first got the invitation, I was shocked. I was like kind of on cloud nine that you guys over there would think enough of me to nominate me for that position, because that's a big deal to me. I've always looked at the publications. Those have always been my go-to sources, them religiously, every time they come through the mail. Any opportunity that I can have to contribute, I take. So I was really excited and kind of blown back a bit that be offered to me. What do I expect
Yeah.
from it? I looked at the list of the other board members and contributors, and there's a lot of really impressive people that I've met throughout the years. So I'm excited to be able to collaborate with them and learn and be able to contribute back to the industry. If there's something I can give that's going to inspire readers like it did when I was younger, I want to be all in.
Do you have any kind of, I don't want to say agenda, but are there some things that you think you'd like to see? Do you know yet? I'm putting you on the spot with this question, I understand.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I look at the industry as a whole, especially as being a vendor and traveling the country, I do see, the funeral industry is very rooted in tradition. And there's a lot of things that are done because it was always done this way. And then there's this general feeling of, oh, well, people, are worried about call volumes and just the consumers are changing. And then we have another generation that's coming in with so many great ideas, so many fresh, great ideas that kind of cater to the changing consumer base. So being able to mesh that all together, the traditional business models with these new and innovative service offerings, and the changing psychology of the consumers and how we can better serve them, all of those things, like, that really excites me. That really gets me jazzed to be able to dig into that and see how can, as an industry as whole, we can adopt these things and make them happen.
And now, as I mentioned already, I know embarrassingly little about your industry. What are some of the innovations there? What are some of the changes that you see in the next decade, let's say, for your?
Some of the things that I've noticed in my 23 years of being here, the amounts of cremation has definitely changed the shipping industry. That's why we're National Mortuary Shipping and Cremation to we can help with out of town cremations. Consumer behavior, going from, you get a death in town, you call the same funeral home that you've called for the last 4 or 5 generations. Help me get mom and dad back home. Now we've got the internet. So there are so many consumers who are out there and they're just looking, type in cremation Tampa, Florida.
Right.
And there's so many options for them to bypass the funeral directors, the funeral homes. It's something that can be just addressed with education. Trying to educate the families that it really is easier to do it with the funeral director and not that much more expensive. That's what we're here for, is to make it easier for them.
One of the things that I think is also going to come into play, especially in the next like 3 or 4 years, is I think consolidation is going to be a rising issue for the same reason that people moving out of town is. At my own at the place where my from which my father was buried doesn't have the same name anymore. It's all of my family has been buried out of there, but when I went back home more recently, I saw that it's now a different name. There's a different name on the front, and all of a sudden, it's like it's a different funeral home. When I was an altar boy out of that, and it was Mr. Day, and Mr. Day owned Day's Funeral Home, but that was, in the 1980s. And now Mr. Day, I didn't have any expectation that Mr. Day would still be working, when my father died, but I did have a weird expectation that his name would still be on the building. And that's what's, and now it's weird. Instead of being, we're not going back to the same, I'm sorry, we're not going there. I don't know where we're going. I don't know who's dying next, but it was odd to see that it's not, quote, the same place, unquote, as if it were. I mean, Mr. Day probably died in 1990. It couldn't have been the same place, It's
definitely different. I've noticed that since, I came, I've worked here. I've worked at independently owned funeral homes. When I did my apprenticeship, we're independently owned. The consolidation is just part of the way the industry is. So, we work with a number of firms that are part of the conglomerates, and it's one of those things, just kind of adapt to the change. It's different, but it's adaptable. It's nothing. Everything in life evolves.
Very good. And that is really all I have for you, unless you have something else for me. Is there something I should have asked and didn't, or something you thought you'd get the opportunity to say, but I didn't provide it?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Very well. Well, then, thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys some more.
Excellent. This bonus episode was written and edited by me, Tony Russo. Please subscribe wherever you're listening now, although I suspect if you're getting this one, you're subscribed. But if you're not, you can subscribe by picking up the smartphone of your choice. If it is an iPhone, there's a little purple circle that is for Apple Podcasts. Just click on that and type in Funeral Service Insider. We're the only one with that name, and you will be able to follow the show there. If you have an Android, there are scads of podcatchers. One of the more popular ones is Spotify. Yes, Spotify has podcasts. Same thing, open up Spotify, type in Funeral Service Insider, pow, you will find us. And that will do it for now. I will be back with you on Friday with another episode of In Case You Missed It. Talk to you then.